Welcome, I am the Loud Little Ducky. Today we are going over Karen Read case leading up to the incident. The last Karen Read video we covered who's who so that we would kind of have a layout of who everybody is as we go through this case. This is going to be probably a long one because we have several testimonies and they are played at 1.25 speed, just a heads up. But let's dive in and get this started. So here we have CF McCarthy's, and you can see that John and Karen are from video surveillance footage are at CF McCarthy's. They are there from 7:37 p.m. to 10:40 p.m. So it says here John O'Keefe arrives to CF McCarthy's wearing jeans, black Nike sneakers, gray two-tone long-sleeve shirt, and a dark baseball cap with an American flag on the front with a friend, Michael Camerano. Karen meets them up there at 8:51 p.m. wearing black pants, black jacket with a white shirt underneath, black boots, and a small purse or handbag. Then when they leave the bar, Karen is seen leaving with her cylinder glass that had some of her last drink in it. Here is the video and Buchnick's recollection. He's the one testifying, and here are the videos of them drinking at CF McCarthy's.
I observe a cylindrical vase-style cocktail glass on the bar, as well as other beer bottles.
Let's go, you can take that down. With reference to the CF McCarthy's video, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to publish certain portions of that. It's already been marked as Exhibit 50.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, from the first video. If I could ask you to pull it up to about 7 minutes and 50 seconds. And Ms. Gilman, if you could pause just for a moment. I'm just going to ask you to play from 7:50 to about 8 minutes and 20 seconds in, but I may ask you to pause this. Sergeant, as far as just, again, for orientation purposes, with reference to the entrance or exit, point of ingress, egress to the bar, do you observe that somewhere within this video?
Yes, at the top of the screen is the front door to CF McCarthy's. I observe a cylindrical vase-style cocktail glass on the bar, as well as other beer bottles.
Thanks. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. With reference to the CF McCarthy's video, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to publish certain portions of that. It's already been marked as Exhibit 50.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, from the first video.
I don't know if you can see where his pointer is, but
If I could ask you to pull it up to about 7
fixing
minutes
to
and
sit
50
down.
seconds. And Ms. Gilman, if you could pause just for a moment. I'm just going to ask you to play from 7:50 to about 8 minutes and 20 seconds in, but I may ask you to pause this. If you could pause there. Sergeant, as far as just, again, for orientation purposes, with reference to the entrance or exit, point of ingress, egress to the bar, do you observe that somewhere within this video?
Yes, at the top of the screen is the front door to CF McCarthy's bar. And as we just viewed, the two gentlemen walking in, they walked in through the front door, heading to the taps area, draft beer location of the bar.
And if you could, just using the laser pointer, direct your attention to that front door area that you're talking about.
The front door area is located right here.
And with respect to those two individuals that came in, do you recognize those two individuals?
Yes, that is the victim, Mr. John O'Keefe, dressed in the same outfit as before, and Mr. Camerano.
If you could play that to about 8:20. Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you from the same exhibits, same exhibit 50, from the third video now. If I could ask you to go to about 6 minutes and 10 seconds in. And I'm going to ask you to play that for about
delay.
6 minutes and 43 seconds.
You want to know the difference in the time.
If I could ask you to pause just there. As far as the individuals around Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano, do you observe or recognize anybody else in the bar area around them at this time?
Mr. O'Keefe is sitting next to Mr. Camerano. I believe Mr. Kurt Roberts is there as well, next to Mr. Camerano.
Now, from this time, we're at about 8:51 p.m. or so within the video. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, as far as the timestamp on this video, what, if any, information were you provided when you retrieved this video on February 1st in relation to that time and its accuracy to for what time was?
During video surveillance extraction, we verify the time and date on the system, and that is to show us how far behind in the past or in the future. Sometimes devices are timestamped that's in the future. It hasn't happened yet in real time, but the video is stamped so. So what we do is prior to extracting video, we identify the difference in time between real time and video time. In this case, C.F. McCarthy's video was 12 minutes behind real time.
Because she...
Thank you. And Ms. Gilman, if you could
pretty much
play
everybody
this
was
to about 6
drinking
minutes and 40 minutes.
and intoxicated. And the drinking has to do with one of the charges. It's not just like a DUI or something like that. But drinking, they have to establish that she was drinking and drunk and all this stuff to prove some of their elements in their case.
As far as anyone else within the area of the bar, the area of Mr. Roberts, who, anyone else you recognize in that area at this point?
I recognize the defendant walking in and interacting with the victim, Mr. John O'Keefe.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, within that same video 3, I would ask you to go to about 13 minutes and 15 seconds. I'm going to ask you to play from here to about 14 minutes and 45 seconds.
So she has her drink. Dawn is talking to her. She puts her straw in. So there's drink number 1.
Pause there. Now, from your review of this video, what, if anything, of significance do you observe in this part of the video?
This part of the video, I observed the defendant reaching over and retrieving a cylindrical, tall cocktail glass from the bartender.
And again, given the understanding that the video is about 12 minutes off as far as the timestamp, the defendant entered about 8:51 p.m. and is receiving this drink about 8:58 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If you could, just come and play that.
Now remember, these two were they were in an argument a little before. So they were in an argument before and stuff, but you can see in this that it looks like they put it aside, whether it's quashed or whether they just don't do it
about 32 minutes
in front of these people while they're out having a good time. They're obviously not fighting and angry at each other.
I'm going to ask you to play that for the next 30 seconds or so, to about 32 minutes and 30 seconds.
So there's a shot. She pours it in her big drink. So that would be number 3.
And Sergeant, during that, about 30 seconds or so, what, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant to receive at that point?
A cylindrical cocktail glass.
And so that would be the second drink, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's at approximately 9:15, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could go forward to about 37 minutes into the same video. If you could play that for about the next minute or so, for about 38 minutes.
So both of her cylinder glasses, they're not empty. One's almost, and then the other one is about half. Looks like she gave that one back. Maybe dumped some of her stuff into the one she has.
Now, Sergeant, again, from that about 1 minute portion from that video, what, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant receive and do with any items?
She received the shot glass beverage and poured it into the tall cylindrical cocktail glass, and then Mr. John O'Keefe stirred it for her.
And so that would now be the third drink, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's about 9:20 p.m., is that correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Gilman,
Fourth
if I
shot,
could direct
yes.
you to the fourth video, video number 4. And ask you to go about 50 seconds into 50 into this video. And I'm going to ask you to play this, Ms. Gilman, from 50 seconds to about 1:30.
So she
Thank you, Ms.
doesn't
Gilman.
have a drink
So,
this
Sergeant,
time,
from this
what I'm
particular
seeing.
video, what, if anything, of significance do you observe the defendant receiving during this time frame?
She receives another shot glass beverage and then places that liquid into her
Flips
tall
Joan
cocktail
off.
glass and stacks the second shot glass into the first shot glass into the first tall cylindrical cocktail glass she had previously received and
Now
consumed.
she has another drink.
This would now
so
be
that
the
would
fourth
be
drink,
number
is that
5.
correct?
That is correct.
And per the video, that's about 9:33 p.m., is that correct?
That is correct.
And Ms. Gilman, within this same video, if I could ask you to go to about 26 minutes and 30 seconds. Ms. Gilman, if you could pause there for just a moment. I'm going to ask you to play this until about 27:40.
I must have missed the shot that got poured in. So they're saying there was a shot that went into that cylindrical thing, so they're saying that's 6.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. During that period, Sergeant, what, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant to receive during that time frame?
She received a tall cylindrical cocktail glass.
And in addition to that, what, if anything else, did she receive from the bartender during that time?
A shot glass size beverage.
And what, if anything, did she do with the shot glass in regard to the larger cylindrical glass?
It was placed inside the tall cylindrical cocktail glass.
So that would be drinks 5 and 6, is that correct?
That's correct.
And per the timestamp on
She's got a
the bar
shot in her hand.
video, this is now about 9:57 p.m., is that correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could direct you to video number 5. And if I could ask you to go to about 3 minutes in. And ask you to play that till about 3:30 or so. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. And if I could ask you to go to about 10 minutes and 30 seconds in. And I would ask you to play that for about a minute to about 11:30 or so.
It would be 7. His count is off. They're going to argue about that, or he's going to try to get him to say that. Pause it here for just a second. But to me, you can't see in the video that she poured it in there. All it showed to me was the guys taking a shot. Now, she may have had one as well and poured it in her drink like she's done before. Don't know. It's kind of being blocked. So they're assuming this, in my opinion. It's not clear on video evidence. And then the previous one where she didn't have a drink and she ended up getting another tall cylindrical glass. They're saying there was a shot with it that was poured in as well when she got that tall cylindrical glass. I didn't see it. If you saw it, let me know in the comments. I may have to go rewatch that portion. But they're saying 6 or 7 drinks. And if she didn't take the last 2 shots, then it's going to be about 5 drinks. So between 5 to 7 drinks is the estimate of what she had at this bar. We'll continue on with this little bit left.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. So, Sergeant, sort of rounder shots during this portion of the video, is that correct?
That's
Yeah, sustained. You can ask it differently.
What, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant and/or the group that she was with do in this portion of the video?
in this portion of the video. The two
The
gentlemen
objection that
to the right of the defendant
defense is
consume
trying to make
a
is asked and
shot-sized
answered.
beverage.
Because
And as far as the shot glass that the defendant received,
Yukovic
what, if
did not
anything, do you observe her
give
to do with that?
the answer that
I'll allow
Adam
it.
Lally
Or the-
wanted.
Strike
He wanted
that.
him to say 7 drinks.
Just what did you observe? Not
He's
what you
saying
have.
6.
What did you observe the defendant
And
to do
so
during
he's
that
trying to get him to
Prior to
say
the
it,
shots
and
being
it's-
taken, a
he's already
shot glass
answered
was
the
poured
question,
into
so he
the
shouldn't
cylindrical
be
tall
able to
glass.
state it again.
And again, so that would be drink number 7 at that point?
That would be drink number 6.
And I'm sorry, so the previous portion was a cylindrical drink and then a shot glass, that was 5 and 6, is that correct?
I think that was the testimony, but ask it differently.
As far as that drink during that portion, is that drink number 6 or drink number 7? Objection.
Yeah, in that form, I'll sustain it.
At this point in time in the video, after watching what you watched, how many drinks has the defendant consumed at this point?
At this point, she's consumed or is in possession of
I'll allow it.
6 drinks.
Really? Because I was thinking it was full.
And this is at approximately
Let's go
10:29
back
p.m., is that
on
correct?
this, 'cause
Yes, that's correct.
Can you
Let's
observe,
see.
or did you observe how full that glass
let's
was?
go back. Sorry.
Drink the defendant has and how full it is.
All right. To me, see, there's the little garnish at the top. and because it's clear, see, it's got the thing on the top, the lemon. It wouldn't just be sitting there if the thing was empty.
So during that
So it
portion of
looks
the video,
full to me,
what, if
but
anything, do you
y'all let
observe
me
as
know.
to the drink the defendant has and how full it is at that point?
She has a cylindrical tall cocktail glass in her hand.
And can you observe, or did you observe how full that glass was?
Drink number 6 is empty, or near the bottom, almost empty.
I keep saying 6.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to go to about 22 minutes and 40, I'm sorry, 22:40 or so within for the time frame also.
To me, it still looks full. And she's still got her drink in her hand. They're saying goodbye to everybody.
Now, from this portion of the video, Sergeant, what, if anything, do you observe the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe doing in reference to C.F. McCarthy?
Once the defendant got drink number 7, the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe walk out of C.F. McCarthy's, the defendant holding the beverage, tall cylindrical glass in her hand.
May I approach?
Yes.
So that is the video surveillance footage of John O'Keefe and Karen Read at the bar and how many drinks they said. What did you see? Because I think interpretations are going to be different in what they see. Are they seeing what they want to see? Are they seeing what actually happened? And so, you know, they were there for about 2 hours, and that's what happened. So next they go to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, and this is going to be on January 28th, leading into early morning hours of January 29th of 2022. And they were there from 10:54 p.m. on the 28th to 12:11 a.m. on the 29th. So like an hour and a half, maybe a little over an hour. Karen and John join the Alberts, the McCabe's, the Colakeithises, and Brian Higgins at this bar. The victim, John O'Keefe, leaves the bar with a short cocktail glass. So John leaves this bar with a cocktail glass when Karen left C.F. McCarthy's with a cocktail glass. But his is a short cocktail glass. Hers was the long cylindrical one. A point defense makes that may be relevant, but is a weak one to me. They say that Brian Higgins and Brian Albert were like play fighting, and to me, where you see them, it's just like 2 guys who have been drinking and they're just kind of being immature and like horse playing and like act like play like they're punching each other. Like I will link a video in the description box if you want to go see it. To me, it's really nothing. It's just guys being guys. But the reason I talk about it is because the defense harps on it a lot, to me too much. But so the question is, was it a clue for later? Like, are they just gearing up to go after John O'Keefe later? Or was this done to get Karen Read's attention? Brian Higgins might want Karen Reed to pay attention to her. As we get further in the timeline, we'll learn more about that. But that is what that is about. To me, it's really nothing. It's just two guys horsing around at a bar. So I don't know, but we're going to mention it because it is a thing that is brought up in the trial. Now here we have some receipts from the Waterfall Bar and Grill. This first one was done on John O'Keefe's card, and it was for a Bud Light bottle, a Miller Lite lager, and Tito's, which I believe is what Karen Reed was drinking. It was about $16.58. He tipped $10. He's a good tipper. And the total was $26.58. Now the second receipt, this was on Caitlin Albert's card, so I don't really know fully what it has to do with I don't know what it has to do with Karen Reed necessarily, but it has a Corona, a Miller Lite lager. I read that as 15 or 16 white clear mango. I don't think it's White Claw mango. It might be. A Jack Daniels and Jameson. The total on that was $32.90. She tipped $3, so it was $35.90 at the end of the night. So maybe one of the White Claws was bought for everybody, or whatever the white mango was. So maybe that's why it's of importance. All right. Then we have another receipt that is from Caitlin Albert, and it was $7.49. Tip was $2 for $9.49. Says 16 White Claw mango. That may just be the code for it, because there's no way that 7 White Claws or 16 White Claws are $7. So there's not 16 of them. It's just the White Claw mango was $7, and that's what she got. She got one more White Claw. Caitlin did, which to me has nothing to do with Karen Reed's drinking, but they are receipts in evidence at the waterfall. Now we have on their camera, it is 12:11 a.m. They said it is about 12 minutes. Well, no, that was the CF McCarthy's. So 12:11 a.m. you see John O'Keefe on surveillance leaving the waterfall. Now back at Fairview, 34 Fairview, we have Brian Albert Jr. is hanging out with his friends Julie Nagel, Sarah Levenstein, Colin Albert, and others. Julie texts her brother Ryan Nagel around midnight to come pick her up. Ryan Nagel arrives around 12:15 a.m. with his friends and girlfriend at the time to pick Julie up. Now, Julie did not go. She decided to stay. So she was there a little bit longer after this. Then we have still at 34 Fairview, while everybody is at the bar, at 11:54, Colin Albert texts Allie McCabe, "You can get me now." And then he also texts her, "If easier." And then at 11:55 p.m., Allie McCabe texts Colin, "Okay, I am driving people home now." Colin Albert texts back and says, if easier, get me after. And Allie McCabe, still at 11:55 p.m., texts Colin back and says KK. At 10:20 a.m., Allie McCabe texts Colin Albert here. At 12:10 a.m., the other one was at 12:10 too, but Colin Albert texts Allie McCabe, okay. And so them two leave, and at about 12:30 a.m., Colin Albert arrives home, which is a few houses down from where John O'Keefe, the victim, lives. Not from where 34 Fairview is, but from where John O'Keefe's house is. So after they left the waterfall, they were invited to go back to the Albert's home and continue on the festivities because it was Brian Jr.'s birthday. And so they left there and went to 34 Fairview. And this is a conversation that happened between John O'Keefe and Jennifer McCabe for the most part. So at 12:14 a.m., John texts to Jen McCabe, where to? Jen McCabe calls Karen, and it's 44 seconds. And that call was deleted off of Jen McCabe's phone. I don't know why she deleted it, but she did. And then before the next call, Jen McCabe arrives at 34 Fairview. At 12:47 a.m., John O'Keefe calls Jennifer McCabe, and that one was 36 seconds. Jennifer McCabe also has deleted this phone call out of her phone. She did it, or the phone did it. I don't know. It's deleted. And then John O'Keefe's pings at 34 Fairview at 12:24 and 22 seconds. He arrives. Then we have at 12:20, so right before John O'Keefe's phone pings at 34 Fairview, Brian Higgins texts John, you coming here? I don't know why Higgins wants to know that. And then Jen McCabe at 12:27 a.m., she says, here, ? Exclamation point. Jennifer McCabe texts or calls again at 12:29:44 a.m., and that one is 8 seconds. That call is also deleted from the phone somehow. At 12:30 a.m., oh, that's when Colin arrives home. At the trial, Colin Albert and his parents, they all state Colin Albert arrived at 12:10 a.m. He was home at 12:10 a.m. Like 3 or 4 people all said 12:10 a.m., which is a very specific time for a bunch of people to say. Like not 12:15, not around 12. 12:10 a.m. That's when he arrived. But we know it's 12:30. So now at 12:31 a.m., Jennifer McCabe texts John O'Keefe, pull behind me. There is also footage of Reed passing the Canton Library. There should be footage of Karen Reed passing the Canton Library, but it is missing. And Karen Reed was going to John O'Keefe's home. And Karen Reed at 12:36 a.m. connects to the Wi-Fi at John O'Keefe's house. So Jennifer McCabe again texts at 12:40 a.m. hello. 12:42:09 a.m. where are you? 12:45, 53 a.m. Hello. So John has not messaged back on any of these particular ones. According to Jennifer McCabe, around 12:45 a.m., she says she sees Karen's SUV leave. Now, if McCabe saw Karen Reed's SUV leave, then she should have seen Karen Reed backing up, hitting John O'Keefe, and then leaving, because she saw her back up and leave. So that's like two motions she says she saw. And she says that it was around 12:45 a.m. So this is more in the timeline. At 1:30 a.m., Brian Higgins has left 34 Fairview, and he goes to Canton Police Department for administrative work. We will do a video probably on his testimony as well. Keep in mind, he's going to Canton PD after he's been drinking at the bar along with everybody else that's been drinking. Don't know if he should be doing that, but he did. At 1:47 and 17 seconds a.m., Jennifer McCabe herself leaves Fairview along with Sarah Levenstein, Matt McCabe, and Julie Nagel, which we'll get the story of that here in a minute from Julie Nagel's testimony. And then we have below at 2:22 a.m., Brian Higgins and Brian Albert talk on the phone, supposedly, despite them testifying they were both asleep. So they said they did not answer the phone. Higgins and Albert both said they must have been butt dials. Albert says that him and his wife were going to fool around, and that his glasses and his phone were in the middle of the bed between him and his wife, and somehow he didn't roll over on it and crush his glasses, but somehow in the meantime he butt dialed Higgins. And Higgins somehow butt dialed Albert. And remember, to butt dial, you would have to accidentally press the phone and it called that person, and then the phone would have to hang up. Neither one of them remember these calls, but they both called each other, and they were both butt dials accordingly. Now, you will come to find out there are a lot of butt dials in this case. Like, sometimes we do butt dial people, but I don't know how many people do it, especially on this night. There seems to be a lot, according to different witnesses. Now, at 12:25, 11 a.m., Jen McCabe sends a text message. At 2:25 and 56 seconds a.m., Jennifer McCabe sends another text message, and at 2:26 and 37 seconds a.m., Jen McCabe deletes two screenshots. Do not know what those screenshots are, but she's sending messages and deleting things, or her phone's deleting things. Depends on who you ask. At 2:47 and 40 seconds a.m., there is a controversial Google search on Jen McCabe's phone. And the Google search was for "house long to die in snow." Now, the defense says that the reports say that it happened at 2:47 and 40 seconds a.m. The state, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts says that no, it didn't happen at 2:47 a.m. It happened around 5 or 6. And like I said, there's been controversy of this because of the report. Why is it going to say that it was searched at 2:47 a.m. if that's not when it was searched? And then the Celebrite people, like the creators or the people that are in charge of it, they said that this information was misinterpreted because the search wasn't actually done until around 5 or 6 a.m. That's when Jennifer McCabe says she made the search when she was outside of 34 Fairview after they had found John in the snow. And we will probably do a whole video covering this particular Google search by itself, but it's a part of the timeline and the story. So that house long to die in snow could have happened at 2:47, but the people that extracted the data say that no, it did not happen that way. It happened at around 5 or 6 a.m. And the explanation is complicated, so that's why I'm going to do another video so that it is explained. And Celebrate has redone their reports and everything because of this misinterpretation. This caused them to do an update so that this stuff wouldn't be reported like this, because this is not good if something gets construed this way, because you think about other cases and people getting convicted over Google searches and a time it says it was searched. If that time's wrong, that could play a huge factor in this case and other cases. So that is a point of controversy in this case. Then we have at 4:44 and 40 seconds a.m., Karen has woken up John's niece with like yelling and screaming and going cray cray. And the niece tries to call John, and there is no answer. Okay. So we are going to listen to some of Julie Nagel's direct testimony. Julie Nagel, remember, is a friend of Brian Jr., and she is the one that had her brother come pick her up, and then she didn't go with him. Later, she was taken home by Jennifer McCabe. And so we are going to listen to her talk about what she saw and the events according to her. And she says she possibly saw something, or she did see something on the lawn. So let's get her started.
I'm not too sure, but I would say a little after midnight.
And who were the first people sort of to arrive in this? We'll call them sort of the second.
I don't remember who came, like who was first, who was second, like that. But I know who came, but I don't know what order.
And who were the people that came?
Yeah, so it was Nicole Albert, Brian Albert, Brian Jr.'s parents, Matt McCabe, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Higgins, and that's it. And Caitlin Albert, sorry.
Okay. And so when they came back, as far as the other four young women that you were talking about, they had already left. Is that correct?
Yes,
And Colin Albert, was he still there when those people came back?
he left as well.
And so Brian Albert Sr. and Nicole Albert, those are Brian Albert Jr.'s parents.
Correct, yes.
We're familiar with them, obviously, prior to January 28th.
Yes,
And you mentioned Jennifer and Matthew McCabe, is that correct?
yes,
And were you familiar with them prior to January 28th?
yes.
And how are you familiar with them?
I'm through Brian Jr., just hanging out with them a few times.
Okay, so she was saying that Colin Albert was not there at this time. And remember, people's testimony was that Colin Albert left the house at 12, or he was home by 12:10, when in actuality, the phone shows that he didn't text for a ride until about 12:11, and he arrived home around 12:30. there's some conflicting testimony in where Colin Albert was during this time period and what he was up to as well. But let's continue to listen.
So just know them through the family.
And so through the family, well, my next question is, what, if any, relationship did they have to your friend Brian Albert Jr. that you...
They are his aunt and uncle.
And then with respect to Brian Higgins, is that someone that you knew prior to January 20th?
I did not know.
So you met the first time that night at the Fairview home.
Correct, yes.
And when they came into the house, this sort of second group, where was it that they went and sort of congregated around the house?
Yeah, we all were still in the same room in the family, the floor plan, which is the kitchen and the dining room area. Yeah.
At any point in time, well, let me ask you this. They come sometime shortly around or after midnight, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And about how long after they arrived, or about what time was it that you left the house for the evening?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
At some point, you went home that night?
Yes.
What time was it?
I would say, give or take, like 1:45.
And so between the time that they came back to the house around 12:15 or so, between that and 1:45, how would you describe sort of the mood and the demeanor in the house at that point?
It was still all the same. Everyone was having fun, hanging out.
Music still playing, people drinking, having a good time?
Yes.
And over the course of this time, as far as the group that you talked about that was in the kitchen and dining room area, did you see any of those people go anywhere else?
I mean, to the bathroom, but I know at one point Mr. Albert, Brian's Jr.'s dad, took upstairs to let the dog out back, but he just opened the back door and watched him from the door and brought him right back upstairs. So that was the only time he went upstairs. But
And as far as the kitchen dining room area, do you recall sort of how people were situated around that area during the time that the second group was there?
yeah, we were all sitting in the kitchen table. It's like a square table, so we're all just hanging out around there. Some at the island in the kitchen, but mostly all just there together.
Do you recall specifically?
So she testifies that she saw Chloe the dog. Another very important piece.
I'm not too sure,
this
but I would say a little after midnight.
I know, I'm
And,
saying
who
there's
were
a
the
lot
first
of
people sort
very
of to
important
arrive in
pieces
this
or
call for the
controversial
second?
pieces, but there's a lot to
I
this
wouldn't.
case.
I don't remember who came,
and
who
why
was first,
it
who was
is
second, like
such
that. But
a
I
heated
know who came, but I don't know what order.
argument
And who were the
on
people
Karen
that
Reed
came?
did it.
Yeah, so it was
Karen Reed
Nicole
didn't
Albert,
do it.
Brian Albert, Brian Jr.'s parents, Matt McCabe,
Or
Jennifer
they
McCabe,
just don't know
Brian Higgins,
what happened.
and
And
that's it.
so
And Caitlin
she said
Albert. Sorry.
she saw Chloe that
And so
night.
when they came back, as far as
Jennifer McCabe
the other four
doesn't remember
young
seeing the
women that you were
dog
talking about, they had
that
already
night.
left, is that correct?
Yes,
And Colin Albert, was he still there when those people came back?
he left as well.
And so Brian Albert Sr. and Nicole Albert, those are Brian Albert Jr.'s parents.
Correct. Yes.
We're familiar with them, obviously, prior to January 28th.
Yes.
And you mentioned Jennifer and Matthew McCabe, is that correct?
Yes.
And were you familiar with them prior to January 28th?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with them?
I'm through Brian Jr. Just hanging out with them a few times, so just know them through the family.
And so through the family, well, my next question is, what, if any, relationship did they have to your friend Brian Albert Jr. that you...
They are his aunt and uncle.
And then with respect to Brian Higgins, is that someone that you knew prior to January 20th?
I did not know.
So you met the first time that night at the Fairview home.
Correct. Yes.
And when they came into the house, this sort of second group, where was it that they went and sort of congregated around the house?
Yeah, we all were still in the same room in the family, the floor plan, which is the kitchen and the dining room area. Yeah.
At any point in time, well, let me ask you this. They come sometime shortly around or after midnight, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And about how long after they arrived, or about what time was it that you left the house?
So she says that she never saw anybody else come into the house. So she did not see John O'Keefe come into the house. Karen Reed did not go into the house, which that's not disputed. Karen Reed wasn't going to come in the house. But she says John O'Keefe never came into the house, which is pretty much what everybody says. But there's some data that could say something different, but I don't know if it does. But we will go over that in the timeline when we get to it. But she says John O'Keefe did not enter the house.
For the...
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
At some point, you went home that night?
Yes.
What time was it?
I would say, give or take, 1:45.
And so between the time that they came back to the house around 12:15 or so, between that and 1:45, how would you describe sort of the mood and the demeanor in the house at that point?
It was still all the same. Everyone was having fun, hanging out.
Music still playing, people drinking, having a good time?
Yes.
And over the course of this time, as far as the group that you talked about that was in the kitchen and dining room area, did you see any of those people go anywhere else?
I mean, to the bathroom, but I know at one point Mr. Albert, Brian's Jr.'s dad to go upstairs to let the dog out back. But he just opened the back door and watched him from the door and brought him right back upstairs. So that was the only time he like went upstairs. But
And as far as the kitchen dining room area, do you recall sort of how people were situated around that area during the time that the second group was there?
yeah, we were all sitting in like the kitchen table. It's like a square table, so we're all just hanging out around there. Some at like the island in the kitchen, but mostly all just there together.
Do you recall specifically, I know we're talking over 2 years ago, do you recall specifically where people were within that area around the table?
I don't know.
Do you recall where you were?
I was sitting like in the corner, so I could see like the island, the kitchen table, like the front door, and like the windows, I guess. Yeah.
Where you were seated around the table, could you see the front door?
Yes.
And so beyond the people that you'd already talked about being in that kitchen dining room area in that second group, did anybody else come into the house that night while you were there?
No.
And at the time on January 28, 2022, were you familiar with either a person named John O'Keefe or a person named Karen Reed?
No.
And at any point in time, not knowing them, did you see anybody else come into the house while you were there between that 12 to 12:15 and 1:45 minutes?
No one else came in. No.
Now, do you recall who was sort of around you, where you were at the table? Immediately around you as well.
I would say Jennifer McCabe, Sarah Levinson,
his girlfriend at the
Caitlin. I can remember like sitting at the table like with me. Yeah.
Now, at some point in the evening, let me ask you this: what if any sort of plans did you have as far as how you were getting home?
Yeah, I did text my brother to see if he could pick me up on his way home with his friend, on their way home to come pick me up, which they did.
Which of your two brothers was that?
My brother Ryan.
So you texted Ryan to see if he could come pick you up?
Yep.
And did you have to give him like an address or anything like that, or how did you explain to him where you were?
I just said I was at Brian Jr.'s house, if he could pick me up.
Was that somewhere that your brother had picked you up from on prior occasions?
Yes.
And about what time, if you know, did you send that text to your brother about getting picked up?
I'd probably say a little after, probably like 15 minutes after midnight. Yep.
And as far as the other people in that second group that you were talking about, how did you reach out to Ryan to get picked up? Are those other people there?
Yes.
And you indicated that your brother then came to the house at some point?
Yes, he did.
And about how long after you texted him did he arrive, if you know?
I'm not quite sure.
And when he arrived, did he come into the house or did he reach out to you in any way to let him know?
He just texted, oh, sorry,
No, I'm sorry.
saying that he was outside.
And upon receiving that text, where did you go?
I went out through the front door.
Now, before you went out through the front door, what, if any, conversation, well, let me strike that as far as conversation, but who, if anyone, did you speak to about the fact that your brother was outside of the house?
Yeah, I just mentioned saying my brother's outside. I do remember
Karen
someone
Reed's
or a
video.
few,
I want to hear the answer first.
just a few people saying, "Oh, just have your brother come in." So I went outside, and it was my brother in the passenger seat, his friend Ricky, and then his ex-girlfriend Heather. I asked them if they wanted to come in. They said no.
I'm going to let that stand, but next question.
So you go outside to where your brother is, right?
Yes,
And do you recall which of the two front doors you used to go outside?
I used the front door.
Front door is the one with the brick steps, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
You come down the brick steps, go down the walkway. Do you recall how you came down to where your brother was?
I walked down the steps through the little path, and then down the driveway, and they were parked right in front of the driveway.
So they were parked right at the end of the driveway?
Yes.
And what kind of vehicle was this that you came up to?
It was Ricky's pickup truck, a Ford F-150.
Just a note, I would be so mad at if I was told to come pick somebody up and I got there and they were like, yeah, never mind. Send them a text and tell them never mind so they can like turn around. But everybody was drinking. She was probably not thinking about it. She may not have even made up her mind until after he arrived, and the McCabe's said, we'll take you home if you don't want to go with your brother right now. But don't make somebody drive all the way there and then tell them you're not going to go with them. Just saying. Now back to our testimony.
And you mentioned that there were 3 people in the truck, is that correct?
Yes.
Where were they seated within the truck when you got?
Ricky was driving his truck. Ryan was in the passenger seat, and then Heather was in the back seat.
You mentioned that Heather is Ryan's ex-girlfriend, is that correct?
Correct.
Were they dating at this time?
At that time, yes.
Now, with regard to Ricky is someone who's a close friend of your brother, is that correct?
Yes.
You know him pretty well.
Yep.
And so you get to the truck, do you recall how it was that you were speaking to your brother Ryan? Was it sort of through an open window? Did he open the door? Or how were you communicating?
He rolled down his window.
And when you came out to the truck at the end of the driveway, what, if any, other vehicles did you see in the area of the house on Fifth?
Well, before when I went outside, I did notice another vehicle before my brother pulled up.
So you had gone outside before your brother had, or Ricky had fully sort of parked the truck?
No, he was like fully outside already, and then I went out, and it was just Ricky's truck.
And so at some point later, there was another vehicle that came up?
Prior.
Right.
Correct.
And can you describe that vehicle for the jury? Sort of what did it look like? What kind of vehicle was it?
Yeah, it was a black SUV.
And had you ever seen that vehicle before?
No.
And you go up to the truck and you're talking to your brother, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with regard to, about how long a period of time were you talking with your brother next to the truck?
I would say maybe 3 minutes max, not even.
And did you invite your brother and his friends inside the house?
Yes.
How did they respond?
They said, no, we just want to go home. And then I was like, I'll find out another ride home.
And so that brings me to my next question. As far as arrangements for you coming home, was there any, prior to you coming out of the house, was there any talk or discussion about how you would get home if you didn't go home with your brother?
Yeah, Matt McCabe and Jennifer did offer to drive me home if I didn't want to go home with my brother. So I just stayed and
Nobody in
then
it, nobody out of it.
took their offer.
You decided you wanted to stay and took them up on their offer.
Correct. Yes.
And in addition to yourself, who if anyone else, went home from the residence on Fairview with
Doesn't
you?
remember any
It was me and
taillight.
Sarah Levinson.
Now, if I could bring you back to that
I
period
mean,
of time when
it
you're
wasn't
outside.
tail light lit up, but
the
she doesn't remember
vehicle that you were talking
anything
about,
really about that.
Where is that in relation to the pickup truck that Ricky's driving?
Well, it was like the SUV wasn't there when my brother was there. It was like before. Like when I was inside, I noticed it. Yeah.
And so at the time that you were talking to your brother in the pickup truck, was the SUV still there?
I don't believe so, no.
And so where was that SUV parked in relation to where the truck was?
So when I noticed, looking out the window, I did notice the SUV in front of the mailbox, and then pulled up a little bit in front of the yard, and then
Just
stopped,
trying
and then
to
pulled up
pull
again
some
towards the flagpole.
exhibits that he wants to show
So
her.
you saw it in sort of 3 different locations at the time that you were seeing it?
Correct, yes.
And again, where were you in relation to the vehicle at the time that you made these observations?
I was inside at the dining room table, looking out the window.
And at any point in time, did you see anybody come out of that?
I did not know.
And at any point in time, did you see any sort of, well, when you came out initially to, or when you were looking out and when you came out, did you recall anything about the
To
weather and sort
verify
of what it was
before
doing
he
at that point?
introduces things into
It was,
evidence.
I
You
would
can't
say
just
like
put
flakes
it
of
into
snow, a little
evidence.
dust on the ground.
That's not
And
how
so
things
from the
work,
dust on the
so
ground,
you have to make
from
sure that she knows
Either
what
the
she's
SUV or
looking
the
at.
pickup truck that Ricky was driving, did you
Recognizes
see any
it.
sort of like imprints in the snow from tires or anything like that?
I don't recall.
You don't recall if there was that much snow or what it was?
Correct.
And as
Verify.
far as anywhere in and around where you had seen the SUV at either of the 3 spots that you saw it, did you see any sort of like footprints in the snow or in the ground or anything like that? And did you see inside of the vehicle, see anybody inside at any point in time?
No.
And
No,
you never saw anybody
he
get
has
out
to
of
ask
that vehicle
permission
at
to publish.
any of the
He's
3
allowed to
different
publish
points
to the
where you
jury.
saw
Now
it
the
parked,
jury gets
correct?
to see
I
it.
did not know.
When you saw the vehicle parked at those 3 sort of separate different locations, was the vehicle on? Was it running, if you could tell?
I'm not sure, no.
And I don't know if you can see the laser pointer when she starts to point it.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
She went out the main entrance. Notice there's 2 entrances. She went out the one in the center of the house. So she was saying that her brother's truck was kind of like behind the mailbox, kind of near the driveway. Because if he's blocking the driveway, that's not a big deal because he was just supposed to pick her up and then leave. So he's not blocking anybody from backing out really. And if he needed to move, he could. But so they're saying that he was kind of like lined up with the driveway where the front of his vehicle would have been, right behind the mailbox. and it was mainly parked like right in front of the end of the driveway. Now he's going to ask about Karen Reed's SUV and where it was parked. So she's pointing in front of the mailbox.
Nagel, I'm going to direct your attention
So our
to
brother's
what
car
you
was
see marked as
behind
71, 72, and
hers.
73.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just going to ask you to take a look at those and look up when you're finished. And at some point, I may ask you to use this, which is basically a laser pointer. Press on that button and point it up at the screen. Okay?
Okay.
So first, if you could just look at 71, 72, and 73.
Little sidebar asking where Karen Reed's vehicle was seen moving up to.
All set.
Generally, with respect to those three photographs, do you recognize what's depicted in them?
Yes.
What do you recognize?
That it's my friend Brian Albert Jr.'s house.
Is that roughly what the house looked like at the time of January 28th, 29th, 2022?
Correct.
So at first it was like the butt of the SUV was, you know, right about at the mailbox. Then Karen Reed's SUV supposedly scoots up just a little bit and it's kind of just right in front of the house directly. So kind of center of the house. And now she's going to explain where she saw it go when it moved up even more.
Yes.
If I could ask you to flip just back to the first one that I showed you, Exhibit 71. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I publish that to the jury at this time?
Okay.
And so, Ms. Nagel, directing your attention up to the screen above you.
So she's saying
this is what's
kind
out for you
of
as
by
Exhibit
the
71, is that
flagpole
correct?
Yes.
behind the
Using the laser
fire
pointer that's
hydrant.
on the desk in front of you, if you could direct the jury's attention to the door that you were talking about that you came out in order to come down and talk to your brother.
Yes. That one right there.
Now, with respect to Ricky's truck, when you came out to speak with your brother Ryan, where was the truck parked?
The truck was parked right here.
And with respect to that vehicle, the black SUV, where that vehicle was initially when you saw it, is that visible in this photograph?
Yes.
And if you could direct the jury's attention to where that. Thank you. If I could draw your attention to the next executive session to flip to Exhibit 72, and Mr. Gilman, if I can have that on. Again, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 72?
Yes.
Now,
Judge does not want to hear
second
about which
position
door, doesn't know
that you
which
indicated
door.
you observed that black SUV in with relation to the house, if you could, using the laser pointer, draw the jury's attention to where that would be in this photograph.
Objection sidebar, Your Honor.
All right. Jurors, feel free to stand up.
Saw the vehicle from inside the house at three different points, correct?
Yes.
You've indicated the first point, the last photograph, is the second point that you saw the vehicle in. Is that depicted in this photograph?
Yes.
If you could, using the laser pointer, just direct the jury's attention to where that second point was that you saw. If I could ask you just to flip to the next exhibit, number 73. Just if I can have that up on the screen. And Ms. Nagel, with regard to the third point, or the third different location that you observed that black SUV on that morning, is that visible in this photograph?
Yes.
And again, using the laser pointer, if you could direct the jury's attention to where you observed it at the third point that you observed the black SUV. Thank you. That's all with this. Ms. Gilman, you can take that.
Thank you.
And at some point over the course of the evening, things eventually start to wind down and people are leaving the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you recall what order it was that the people left the house on that morning?
I'm not quite too sure, no.
And with respect to yourself, you
Fair.
indicated that you left with Miss Levinson and the McCabe,
Mike,
correct?
you been
Yes.
drinking?
And do you recall who, if
You
anyone
might
else,
could
was
crave some
present in
food
the home
and
when you
want
left?
some PB&J.
I'm not sure, no.
And so when you left, how was it that you came out of the residence at that point?
Out the front door.
She had her seatbelt on.
Same front door that you had indicated earlier.
Yes.
So let's move on with which door, please.
You come out from that door, where was it that you went?
Went into Matt and Jennifer's car.
Do you recall anything about the car, what type of car it was, or,
It was an SUV, but I don't know what kind it was.
and where was that vehicle parked when you went over to it?
I was in the driveway.
So Matt McCabe is driving. Jennifer McCabe is in the passenger seat. She is turned, looking where the center console is, to the back seat, kind of like a mom when she's like riding and dad's driving or something, and she goes to look and talk to the kids or yell at the kids. You turn around and you look through the middle of the seats. That's what Jennifer McCabe was doing. And then we have right behind Jennifer McCabe was Sarah Levinstein, who was kind of had her body facing towards the center. And then Julie Nagel here, she was behind the driver's seat in the back, facing towards the center and towards her friend Sarah. So the girls were like kind of like in a V shape, but everybody was looking towards the center. Matt McCabe was hopefully looking straight ahead. So everybody knows where everybody's positioned and how.
And do you recall sort of how you came from the front door to the driveway?
Just walked on through the pathway in the front yard and then out the door.
So sort of along the brick path through the driveway to the car.
Yes.
Black
Recall
blob.
when you got in the car, where
Around
you were seated and where
1:45
anyone
when
else
they
was
were
seated
leaving.
in the car?
Yeah, it was Matt driving, Jennifer in the front, and then me behind Matt, and then Sarah next to me in the back behind Jen.
Now, after you get in the car, about how long was it before the car backs out of the driveway?
I'm not quite too sure.
And what, if any, conversations do you recall as far as going on during that period of time prior to the car backing out and going?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Now, when the vehicle leaves from the house, at some point it's going by the house, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall which side of the McCabe's vehicle was facing towards the house? And by that I mean, was it the side you were sitting on or the side that Ms. Levinson was sitting on?
The side that Sarah was sitting on.
And that would have been the passenger side, is that correct?
Yes.
And at the time that the vehicle was driving by the house, what is it that you were doing at that time?
We were having a conversation. So Jen was kind of facing towards the back, towards me and Sarah. We were talking about making PB and jelly sandwiches because there was some peanut butter and jelly and bread in the car. So talking about that. But yeah.
And so when Ms. McCabe she's in the front seat, is that right?
Yes.
And she's talking to you and Ms. Levinson, correct?
Yes.
And how is it that she's positioned, talking to you with relation to the seat that she's in?
Yeah, I would say she was kind of turned back a little bit towards us in the back seat.
And what I'm asking is, she turned towards sort of the center of the vehicle, or she turned towards
She said it was
the
by the
window next?
flagpole.
Towards the center of the vehicle.
And you're speaking to her and to Ms. Levinson, correct?
Yes.
Which direction are you facing?
Facing towards Sarah and Jen.
And which direction is Sarah facing as you're having this conversation?
Towards me.
And as you drive by home,
So she says she sees something near the flagpole that was black, like a black blob. Now, and it was like laying in the snow. Could it have been the shrub? I don't know if that's what she was thinking, because there's like a shrub kind of thing over there. Maybe she saw that. Or was it laying in the snow? Like she said, she was intoxicated. We don't really know. But she has extra details about what this is. So could it still be the shrub? Or was it actually laying in the snow, not just a blob coming out of the snow? And she said, "Oh, I think I see something." So this is before 2 a.m., around 1:45-ish. Which if the black blob that she sees in the snow is John O'Keefe, it's saying that whatever happened to John O'Keefe happened before 2 a.m., if what she saw was that. and if she in fact did see that for sure.
What, if anything, did you observe?
I did notice behind Sarah and Jen, I did notice something out of the ordinary, like a black blob in the ground by the flagpole.
And from where you were situated in the car, do you know sort of what was the lighting like over in that area of the yard that you saw by the flag?
It was pretty dark out, but the snow was kind of heavy at that point,
One more
so
question for her.
couldn't really see too much, but
It's important to her.
Snow's coming down at that point?
yes.
And if you know about where in relation to the flagpole was this black object that you saw?
I'd probably say like close to like the street, but like in their lawn, right kind of in front of the flagpole next to it.
Now, I'm sorry to do this again, but Ms. Gilman, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would just ask that exhibit number 72 be back up on the screen.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I should actually ask for exhibit number 73.
So she says the blob was about 5 to 6 feet long. So doesn't sound like she is talking about a shrub. Because I figured she would say maybe yay high, or she would realize it was a tree. But that is her description of a black blob. She is the only person in testimonies that ever saw something on the lawn before 2 a.m. All right, now we have her on cross. The Commonwealth has finished their direct, and so now let's see what the defense wants to know and what she says here.
The front door of that house, you saw no body on that front lawn in front of you, correct?
When I walked out,
Correct.
no.
None of the other three people yelled out that they saw a body, correct?
Correct.
You got into Jennifer McCabe's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And you were seated behind the driver, correct?
Yes.
And the driver was Matthew McCabe, correct?
Correct.
Jennifer McCabe was in the front passenger seat,
Yes.
and Sarah Levinson was sitting next to you behind the front passenger, correct?
Yes.
Matthew McCabe backed the car out of the driveway and then headed up toward Chapman Street, correct?
Yes.
That meant that the passenger side of the vehicle was closest to the Albert home, correct?
Yes.
So that meant that Sarah Levinson and Jennifer McCabe were in the seats that were closest to the Albert home, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. As Matthew McCabe was driving that vehicle alongside the Albert property line, Jennifer McCabe in the front passenger seat and Sarah Levinson in the rear passenger seat were the closest two people to the Albert home, correct?
Yes.
And as the car passed in front of the Albert home, you saw no tire tracks in the snow, correct?
I don't remember.
You claim now to have seen a black object in the snow, correct?
Yes.
Object is the term that you used when you were finally interviewed about this matter, correct?
A black object, yes.
Right. You never before ever told any investigator that what you actually saw was a black blob, correct?
I don't remember.
And you also never, ever told any investigator that this black object that you described was actually 5 feet or 6 feet long, correct?
Correct, yes.
The very first time you're now mentioning the front door of that house, you saw no body on that front lawn in front of you, correct?
When I walked out,
Correct.
no.
None of the other three people yelled out that they saw a body, correct?
Correct.
You got into Jennifer McCabe's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And you were seated behind the driver, correct?
Yes.
And the driver was Matthew McCabe, correct?
Correct.
Jennifer McCabe was in the front passenger seat,
Yes.
and Sarah Levinson was sitting next to you behind the front passenger, correct?
Yes.
Matthew McCabe backed the car out of the driveway and then headed up toward Chapman Street, correct?
Yes.
That meant that the passenger side of the vehicle was closest to the Albert home, correct?
Yes.
So that meant that Sarah Levinson and Jennifer McCabe were in the seats that were closest to the Albert home, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. As Matthew McCabe was driving that vehicle alongside the Albert property line, Jennifer McCabe in the front passenger seat and Sarah Levinson in the rear passenger seat were the closest two people to the Albert home, correct?
Yes.
And as the car passed in front of the Albert home, you saw no tire tracks in the snow, correct?
I don't remember.
You claim now to have seen a black object in the snow, correct?
Yes.
Object is the term that you used when you were finally interviewed about this matter, correct?
A black object, yes.
Right. You never before ever told any investigator that what you actually saw was a black log, correct?
I don't remember.
And you also never, ever told any investigator that this black object that you described was actually 5 feet or 6 feet long, correct?
Correct, yes.
The very first time you're now mentioning this testimony that this black object, as you describe it, was actually 5 or 6 feet long was just today, after 12 noon on May 14th of 2024, correct?
Lally asked me how big it was, so I just told him right now, yeah.
Yeah, Lally, when you say Lally, you mean Mr. Lally.
Yes, Mr. Lally, correct, yes.
Mr. Lally just asked you during this trial, again,
Yeah.
right before this jury. That's the first time you've ever been asked or ever given an answer as to how big that object was, correct?
Not necessarily, no.
Did you review any report that was taken when the investigators spoke to you regarding this case before taking the stand today?
No.
You've never testified in a grand jury regarding this case, correct?
Correct.
You've never testified in any hearing regarding this case, correct?
In this hearing, in this case,
Besides today.
no.
And you would agree with me that it is nowhere on record that this black object that you talk about was ever 5 or 6 feet long prior to telling the jury that today.
Objection.
You have to ask that differently, Mr. Yannetti.
Today, this afternoon, is the first time that you've provided testimony or information to any official regarding this case that the object was 5 or 6 feet long.
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Who did you tell prior to today?
About what?
Okay, I thought we were talking about the fact that you've now testified that this black object was 5 or 6 feet long. You recall that?
Today, yes.
And my question to you was, you've never mentioned that this black object was 5 or 6 feet long until the last hour or so when Mr. Lally questioned you about it, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you were passing the property, you did not think it was a body.
At the time, no.
You claim that you told everyone in the car that you saw something, correct?
Correct.
And your friend Sarah said what? Or something to that effect, correct?
Correct.
And there was no further conversation after that, correct?
Not that I can remember. No.
And you didn't think that it was a person who was in trouble, correct?
Objection.
Did you think that? At what time, Mr.?
When you were leaving the property, after leaving the house at 1:45 a.m. and getting into the McCabe vehicle and passing the Albert lawn, you did not think that you saw a person who was in trouble, correct?
No.
Or a person that may have needed help, correct?
I don't know, no.
And you were right there, correct, passing the property?
I was passing the property,
Not
yes.
as close to the property as your friend Sarah Levinson, but you were in the back seat on the driver's side, correct?
Correct.
And you were in a car such that if you thought that you saw something that could have been a person, all you had to do was tell the driver, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you tell the driver that you saw somebody who was in trouble?
Well, I said it out loud in the car.
So is it your testimony now that you said out loud in the car, there's a person who's in trouble?
That's not what I said, no.
You didn't mention a person at all in the car, correct?
No.
You did not tell Matthew McCabe, hey, stop the car, correct?
I did not know.
If you had seen a person in the snow
She doesn't
lying
claim it's a
there,
body. She
you would have
just
done
saw a
something
black
about
log,
it, correct?
Objection.
5 to 6 feet long.
You didn't ask Matthew McCabe to stop.
No.
You didn't ask him to back up.
Nope.
You didn't ask him to check on whatever it was.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
No.
You had your phone with
So the defense wants to destroy the credibility of her seeing a black object because she's the only one that saw a black object. She doesn't say it was a body. She just says she saw a black object and she was intoxicated. So did she see it or did she not see it? She had been drinking. They're trying to discredit her testimony about the body. But they want to believe the testimony of other stuff. But it lines, some other stuff lines up with evidence. But this black blob is only seen and talked about by her. So the defense doesn't want the body to be there before 2 a.m. maybe, but it could still be there at 2 a.m., before 2 a.m., and not have been hit by Karen Read. It also could be there and it was hit, but Jennifer McCabe says she saw Karen drive off, back up and drive off. So, and she didn't see a wreck. So, what do we believe here?
With you, correct?
Yeah,
Your phone was working, correct?
I don't remember.
You used that phone to text your brother.
An hour and a half before.
Are you testifying today that your phone was completely out of charge?
I don't remember, no.
Text your good friend Brian Albert Jr. to tell him that you saw somebody lying on his front lawn?
Did I text him
Yes.
that night?
As you are supposedly seeing this black object, the
Objection.
immediate aftermath of that, did you text Brian Albert Jr. to tell him about that black object?
So in that form, it's sustained. Ask it differently, Mr. Yanni.
You had your friend Sarah Levinson with you, correct?
I did in the car, yes.
You knew she was a nurse, correct?
Yeah,
You didn't tell your friend Sarah that you just saw somebody lying in the snow during a blizzard who might need some help, correct?
I did not know.
That Brian Jr.'s father was a police officer, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
So let's move this. Are you just about done with this line of questioning? I'll give you a little bit more.
Just a couple more questions and I'm
Okay,
done.
go ahead.
You knew that he was a police officer, correct?
Yes,
And obviously a first responder as a police officer, right?
yeah,
And you knew that that was Jennifer McCabe's brother-in-law, correct?
yes,
And Jennifer McCabe was in the car with you, correct?
yes,
You didn't tell Jennifer McCabe or JJ to call her brother-in-law, correct?
no,
The fact of the matter is, you did nothing, right?
yeah,
And that's because you did not see a body on that lawn, correct?
Objection.
Is that true? Can you answer that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
You didn't see a body on that lawn.
I mean, I don't know what I saw, but I saw an object.
You were drinking for hours.
Is that a question?
So, this the first time she has said how long the black object was. She never has said anything about that before because nobody has answered her. She told Michael Proctor about the object. And now Proctor is another controversial figure in this case for many reasons. And you will grow to figure out why he is problematic. And so they're questioning, well, why didn't you ever say how big it was before? Well, because nobody asked, basically. And they should ask, but that is what the defense got out of her on cross. She didn't see anything when she went to her brother's vehicle. Then when they went to leave, she did see it. She said, hey guys, I think I see something. She didn't think it was a body. She didn't tell anybody. But later, after the incident happened, she's like, oh my God, I saw a black blob. Could that have been John O'Keefe? And when she made that connection that she may have seen John O'Keefe on the lawn when she left at like 1:45-ish, she didn't tell anybody. Like, she didn't call the police and say, hey, here's this tip. Y'all might want to talk to me. And so the police, Michael Proctor, lead investigator, did not talk to Julie Nagel until October 5th, I believe is the date. So several months later, she was talked to about this incident. And then now here we are, and this was in 2024. She's now stating this is how big it was. So she's made the correlation that that black blob was or could have been John O'Keefe. Now, before we get into this next part, while I'm recording this, a new motion just came out, and it specified that Brian Higgins was only at the Canton Police Department for about 8 minutes. And so if he arrived around 1:30ish, he left about 8 minutes or so later. So he wasn't there very long. That was just a new piece that came out that also fits into this before everything happened scenario. But getting back to our timeline, we have in an interview and statement where Jennifer McCabe observes the black SUV pull away and leave. Now we have at 12:46 and 16 seconds a.m., Jennifer McCabe calls the victim. Again at 12:47:52 a.m., she calls the victim, John O'Keefe. As well as at 12:50 and 37 seconds a.m., she calls the victim once again. So 3 calls, they go unanswered. They're also deleted from Jennifer McCabe's phone. Jennifer McCabe states that these phone calls were butt dials. Like I said, we have lots of butt dials. So Brian Higgins had a butt dial to Brian Albert. Brian Albert had a butt dial to Brian Higgins. Now we have Jennifer McCabe saying there were 3 butt dials to John O'Keefe's phone. Now we are getting into Karen Read's info. So between 12:58 and 19 seconds a.m. and 1 a.m. and 49 seconds, Karen Read calls John O'Keefe 5 times. At 1:02 a.m., Karen Read texts John, "Your kids are cucking alone." 1:04, 14 seconds a.m., Karen texts John, "I'm back in Mansfield. The kids are home alone." She was not back in Mansfield. She's just texting him because he's not answering his phone. And she's getting pissed off. Then we have from 1:10:17 a.m. (11 calls). So from 1:10 a.m. to 1:18 and 38 seconds a.m., we have about 10 calls, 10, 11 calls. So 15, 16 calls already to his phone and 2 text messages. She is not happy. Because why is John not answering his phone? Why hasn't he come home yet? She's mad. Here's a picture of 1 Meadows Avenue. This is John O'Keefe's home. And remember, at 12:36 a.m., Karen Read has gone from 34 Fairview, the Alberts' home, to 1 Meadows Ave, and she is connected to the Wi-Fi as of 12:36 a.m. Which means that Jennifer McCabe, seeing Karen Read around 12:45 backing up and leaving in her SUV, that timeline is not correct. Her timing could be off. she could have seen her, but if she saw her and she didn't see a wreck, you still got to question that. But it's been years since this happened. She might not remember fully correctly. It could go both ways. But Karen Read, as of 12:36 a.m., is at John O'Keefe's home on Wedden Meadows Ave. Now we're going to go into, after those phone calls and stuff, or phone calls and texts, we are going to get into some voicemails of Karen Read calling John O'Keefe. The first one is at 12:37 a.m. John, I effing hate you. 12:42 a.m. There's no word spoken and only inaudible sounds, banging like sounds are heard. So nothing was said on that one. 12:59 a.m. John, I'm here with the effing kids. Nobody knows where the F you are. You effing pervert. Now I'm reading these calmly, but you'll get to hear them and how it sounded. 1:02 a.m. A second message with no spoken words. 1:11 a.m. It's 1 in the morning. I'm with your effing niece and nephew. You effing pervert. You're a effing pervert. 1:18 a.m. John, I'm going home. I cannot believe, that was inaudible. Bleh. I need to go home. You are effing using me right now. You are effing another girl. Niece is sleeping next to me. We redacted the name. You're a effing loser. F yourself. So then, I guess she goes to sleep maybe for a little bit, crashes out. She calls him again at 5:23 a.m. John, blah, 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 inaudible. Then again, she calls him at 6:08 a.m. The sound of windshield wipers and a 911 call can be heard in the background. A screaming Karen Read is also heard. So you can hear her screaming in the background of this voicemail, and she is in the car at this point and trying to call him. So as you could tell by just reading those voicemails, Karen Read is not happy. She fell asleep, and from like a little after 1 until right around 5, she wakes up. John is still not home. After she tried getting a hold of him a bunch. But Karen Read, not only were there all of those phone calls and texts and voicemails, within those, for a total of over 50 times that morning, she tried to contact John. So you have to ask yourself, is she trying to set an alibi? Like she doesn't know where he is? If you're trying to set an alibi, would you be angry and saying, I effing hate you and all these rude things to them? Or would you be nice and act like you're just this loving, caring girlfriend and you're just wondering where he is? And would you call over 50 times if you did this on purpose?
Now, as far as this first voicemail,
Or
what time did this
does this
occur?
sound like somebody who
12:37
really
a.m.
doesn't know where John is,
And with the court's permission, if I
And-
could play that for the jury.
Yes.
doesn't know what has happened to him, and she is just really wondering and panicking?
Third message,
Is
what
she
time is
trying
that?
to set an alibi?
Received?
Or do you
12:59.
think she is genuinely concerned? Is this how an alibi would be set? You get to make
With
the
regard to the
decision.
fifth message, what time
I'm
was
just
that
laying
received by
out
Mr.
both
O'Keefe's
sides
phone?
here.
1:11 a.m.
Here are what the voicemails sounded like.
You pervert. You're
In the sixth message, sir, what time was that received by Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
1:18 a.m.
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit Amy. I need to go home. You are using me right now. You're another girl. He's sleeping next to me. You're a loser. Self.
The seventh message, sir, what time was that received by Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
5:23 a.m.
John, we're dying.
So that was done by Court TV. And that has all of the voicemails in them. She is mad. Is it because she doesn't know where John O'Keefe is, or is it because she's setting up an alibi? So that is where we are going to stop in this timeline leading up to the incident, because now we are at after 5 a.m. and John O'Keefe is still nowhere to be seen. Hit the like button, subscribe so that you know when the next videos are coming out, and I will see you next time.